popularly acclaimed worldwide as the father of Pentium, Shri Vinod Dham, an alumnus of Delhi College of Engineering, now Delhi Technological University, has over 40 plus years of experience in developing semiconductor products, technologies, and venture capital. He has been involved in mentoring startup entrepreneurs as an angel investor. He is a founder of Indo-US Venture Partner, an India-focused early-stage venture capital fund. He has received numerous recognition over the years. In the past, he was named as one of the top 25 executives in the computer industry and one of the top 100 most influential Asian Americans. Recently, Shri Vinod Dham has been highlighted amongst the Indian Americans who have helped shape America at the storied Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. I invite Shri Vinod Dhamji for convocation address.
Thank you very much. Respected dignitaries, members of faculty and administration, honored guests, graduating students, ladies and gentlemen. My sincere thanks to Vice Chancellor Professor Yogesh Singh for giving me this rare honor of addressing the students of my alma mater and all of you. My heartiest congratulations to the graduating class of 2019. It's indeed a privilege to be with you today at your commencement from one of the best technology universities in India. Formerly Delhi College of Engineering, Kashmiri Gate, the college I graduated from in 1971. I'm a proud alumnus of this historic school, and I'm grateful for the honor to speak at this magnificent commencement ceremony. I must admit, it's a very emotional moment for me because this is the school I entered, put my first step 53 years ago, so long. And to be acknowledged by this school is very, very special to me and dear to me. And it's also very heartening, and I was speaking to Honorable Lieutenant Governor, that when we went to school, there were less than a handful of women, both as faculty and as students in our time. And it's very, very heartening to see actually more than 50% of people we acknowledge in PhD by rough calculations seem to be ladies. And I also had the honor of meeting quite a few ladies faculty members. So it's very, I think India will never be a backward country as long as we educate our men and women. I will also be deeply remiss if I didn't acknowledge my classmates. They're sitting here in the first two rows, some of whom have come from way afar, places like Sydney, and were really instrumental in shaping who I am today, because without their help, I don't think I could have even gone through the whole graduation process. When I sat down to prepare my speech, I reflected on what I would have liked to hear from a commencement speaker if I was sitting where you are sitting today. And I concluded that I would have liked to hear what my journey has been in my life and what made me successful and what were some of the failures and how I overcame them. So today, I'm going to just share some of my life's journey and share with you some of the nuggets of what I learned as a message to you so you can take something away from my personal experience. When I graduated in 1971, there were barely a handful of private companies. Today's household names like Hindustan Computers Limited, Infosys, Wipro, and TCS did not even exist. There were no multinationals to speak of, and jobs were scarce. Luck and serendipity played a role in my landing my first job. I was the youngest son of a refugee family of 5 with very modest means. I bumped into a family friend who introduced me to a nascent semiconductor company where he worked as a technician. One big attraction to me for following up on his request was this company was not too far away from where I was living. I immediately filled an application and fortunately received an invitation for an interview, got accepted, and joined this company at the age of 21 for a meager 500 rupees per month job. A visionary man, late Gurpreet Singh, who hailed from a very rich family, had dreamt of building semiconductors in India at a very young age by simply reading about it in a popular electronics magazine. In mid-60s, he created a partnership with a California company named Teledyne Semiconductors to procure their technology and know-how and bring it into India in his Faridabad plant to assemble and test discrete semiconductor chips. By the late 60s, he started fabricating these chips in a new plant, which he set up in Narayana, where I started my first job. Building chips requires knowledge of physics, chemistry, materials, and electronics, some of the things that I had studied in Delhi College of Engineering. And I must admit that there was something really exotic about building a chip that really fascinated me, and I got attracted to and fell in love with my very first job. I was exposed to a variety of different divisions within the company, from fabrication chip, for testing chip, assembling chip, to even the shipping of the product. So I was being well-rounded into the company as I was growing. But there was always one issue. I did not seem to really, truly understand the depth of technology behind building the chips. I was doing the job, but I really did not have a very good understanding of it. There was one such occasion where I was in charge of the production, and a whole production lot came out, and it appeared to have failed, which was very disappointing to me. And I had left that lot away to go back and see, maybe look at it at a later date. And 2 weeks later, when we checked the same lot, we found that it was actually working fine. And in between that, I had a lot of senior colleagues, US return, Berkeley graduates, Stanford graduates, that our Gurpreet Singh had hired, who were advising me on a variety of reasons why the yield would be poor. And none of them turned out to be true. It was simply just an electrical connection that was not working properly. And that was highly disappointing to me, and I think was a turning point for me. I went over to my boss, a guy named Mr. Madan, who actually had come after working for a decade in Holland, in Philips Semiconductor. And I think he was one of the most qualified semiconductor person in India at that time. And I divulged to him very honest feeling that, look, I don't really know what I'm doing here. And he said, well, do you want to study more about semiconductors? And I said, yes, I do. And he said, then you need to go to the United States. You need to get admission into university which are specializing in teaching semiconductors. And there is where my journey started. It was a game-changer advice that I got from this man, and it changed my life forever. Even though I was lucky to discover my passion relatively early on, it still took many years for me to really gain enough expertise and skills to become competent in it. So my advice to you is that even if it takes you some time to discover your passion, it's all right. Don't wait, get started. You'll discover it along the way through a series of experiences and self-awareness. At the end, however, you will be happier to have lived a life you want, not how someone else wants to live it. That's very important. It's okay, it's very good to discover what you're passionate about, so that you can go through the rest of your life working as if the work has become a play for you. Because when you are passionate about something, you don't really think about it as a work. You think of it as really a fun thing to do. So it's important to take some time to discover what is it that you like, and then pursue that, whatever it is. My second advice to you is to be the best in whatever you discover to be your calling. So not only first discover what your calling is, just be the best. You know, I tell people, even if you're just a concrete layer or bricklayer or a maker of this, whatever this auditorium is, just be the best at it. And if you are the best at it, you will be acknowledged. Don't be satisfied with chalta hai attitude. Just try to keep on pushing it to the limit till there is no limit, because there are limits beyond the limits that we do in America, and we discover and we are surprised by ourselves. A lot of my inventions that I did and worked on truly were, at the time that we were inventing, we had such a myopic and narrow focus on what we were thinking we were doing, and ultimately they went out. This flagship is in every smartphone that is in the world today. When I was inventing it, I had no idea. I had no idea there'll be a smartphone. I had no idea there'll be a cell phone. But we did what we did in a very narrow focus, but it made a huge impact later on in the world. My first job in US was at NCR. NCR was a cash register company, point of sale terminals company. It was a century-old company, and they were a dominant supplier in the world for making point of sale terminals. But during the World War II, the government of the United States asked them to go into creating secret communication systems. You know, it's very interesting how US government plays a very significant role in telling its corporations, which are private companies, to go do things for the government and its secrecy, which really was something I only learned. Even in a democratic nation, they actually force themselves to get what they want out of the private industry as well. When I hear these things in India, people complaining that, you know, Modi ji did this, Modi ji did that to this company, I don't have any reason to be sorry for that. I think that's the right thing to do. We need to have people who are capable of starting industries be given a chance to do that. So fine, they will become rich, but they will also make a lot of us rich. So it's a good thing to do. Now, my first job here was really a one-on-one between me and my boss. My boss, a guy named Dr. Marie Trudel, was a Canadian who had moved on to Dayton, Ohio, which was, I called it armpit of America. So I might start my job in the armpit of America, a place which really was nowhere. But he delightfully spent one-on-one time with me every day for hours, teaching me how research is done. How do you develop new technologies? How do you create inventions? What are patents? What are other people doing? This whole arena was exposed to me for the first time in my life when I started doing this job. Now, he himself was from Bell Labs, and I'll give you some colors only so you can understand the overall picture of what goes on in the United States of America and how these things happen. He had come from Bell Labs. Now, Bell Labs was the most prestigious crown jewel of America. The largest number of Nobel Prize winners in the world have all come from a single institute called Bell Labs. That's where they used to do research. And so he had studied the art of doing research there and passed that on to me. He and I did some co-inventions together. We wrote some patents together. We did some publications together. And he was a kind-hearted soul who always put me in front of the audience to present the work that actually really was originally his thought, even though I was one of the junior guys working on it. But they are so gentle and so kind that they will allow you to, be in the front end so you can get the acknowledgement. During one of these presentations in Monterey, California, where Intel also was present, and actually they were the chairman of the session, like some of the people sitting in the dais, the Intel person really took a tremendous liking to the work I was doing. And at the lunchtime, this was my first visit to California, came over to me and said, "What are you doing for lunch?" And I said, I don't know. I will go somewhere and find a place to eat. And rest is all history. He hired me. He lured me away from NCR, and I became part of Intel for the next 16 years. Now, Intel is a very interesting company. I'll give you a little glimpse because all these PhDs sitting here somehow had this back home as well, had this image that PhDs are really not people who can build companies. They are more academic. They can just read and do research and live in ivory towers. Not true at all. Intel was founded by 3 PhDs, 2 in physics and 1 in chemistry. And that company today is the largest semiconductor company in the world. So you please take away that even if you are a PhD, you can go make a big difference, because science and technology, you can innovate in areas that nobody really has treaded into. And that's very important. So initially, Intel started as a memory company where we were building dynamic memories, solid-state memories, semiconductor memories to replace, at that time, magnetic memories. So memories used to be magnets in which the information was stored as 1 and 0. So clearly, Intel took off, became very successful. But very soon, we were completely overwhelmed by the Japanese. This is, I'm talking about 1980s. NEC, Fujitsu, Toshiba, Hitachi, just name it. They are very precise people. They are very disciplined people. When they do something, they do with a process control within 1 sigma limit, which really we were not that disciplined in America about. So we were getting beaten in terms of the production, yield, cost, performance, every aspect of the industry. So we at Intel, not me, I was still a junior person, but my boss, Andy Grove, and Gordon Moore, they took a very, very important decision. They said, either we will have to go out of business or we have to find a different niche. And the different niche we found was microprocessors. And that is what has made Intel what it is. Now, I gained my entry into this microprocessor in a very interesting way, and I'll share that with you only to let you know that you are responsible for your own jobs, for your own careers. Don't look at your boss to promote you and to make you bigger. You are like a business onto yourself. You need to make sure you're investing in yourself. Investing in yourself means you're constantly upgrading your skills. You're constantly learning new skills. This is just the beginning of your life. What you have learned so far is great, but you will discover in real life you have to stay up and keep up with what's going on. So that's a very important message that I like to give it to you. And in this case, I was an inventor, I was an R&D guy with a white coat, and I was respected for being a nerd. But I didn't want to be a nerd all my life. I wanted to go out and be exposed to customers, run businesses, be a general manager, understand finance. Well, nobody was giving me a chance to do that because there were already people who were highly qualified to do those things. And I discovered through just a grapevine, so you always stay connected, okay? It's very important to always stay connected with everybody all the time. I understood from the grapevine that there was a very serious problem in Intel that the 386 microprocessor, which they were already 1 year behind Motorola, was only yielding half a die per wafer. That means they could not even get 6 products, 6 chips working in a whole lot, while there should be, by the way, 600 of them working. Just imagine that. And when I discovered that, something inside of me told me that they are on the wrong path, because all the people who were fixing the problem were design engineers. They had no understanding of the underlying physics. And I had done semiconductor physics. And I also understood design. So I inserted myself to the general manager of that division. I went over to him, I said, what if I do this for you? And he said, my gosh, you will save my job because I'm in very big trouble. So I said, okay, just give me, put me on this task force that Mr. Andy Grove ran himself, and I will deliver to you what we need. And I worked with about 6 other people from fab and technology side. We got from half a die per wafer to 22 die per wafer in 9 months. Now, if you do something like that, believe me, you get noticed. And that was the beginning of my rise at Intel, because Andy Grove himself personally knew it, was very grateful that I saved the company from big disaster. Otherwise, Motorola would have actually overtaken Intel, and Compaq was waiting for its chip, and we were not able to supply. So the whole story went on, and actually I got into the limelight where they began to watch me, and they began to start grooming me for the future jobs. So I did 486 also, and that was one of the guys who was heading that program suddenly left, and then I was called in by Mr. Grove and asked that these are very big shoes to walk into, but we think you may be able to do that, so please go ahead and do that. And they were very big shoes. I was not fully prepared for a lot of things. And by the way, you don't have to be always fully prepared. Be confident. Believe in yourself. Take over things that are beyond you. Don't always be timid and shy about only doing what you know exactly what you know. Otherwise, you will never progress and never learn more about what you need to learn. So I actually took upon a job that I wasn't really qualified for. Because I was offered the job, I said, I'll take it over. And then rest is history. 486 became one of the most highest selling microprocessor. I took it from $0 to $5 billion of revenues. Bulk of the profits of Intel was coming from that. And then came a moment when Intel decided that suddenly PC market has become very popular. Everybody is now aware that this is a real market. It's not a fad. It's not a game. It's not a toy. Not only people at work are using it, people want to use computers at home also. And at that moment, he called me in and he said, I want you to step away from what you're doing and start a new program called P5, which was a code name for Pentium. I must tell you, it was a tinge of disappointment for me because I was riding high. When you're a general manager and you're a boss and you're getting all these bonuses and all that, you feel very special. And then he's put me back into the square one again, saying, okay, start from scratch and start building a new processor. But I must tell you, it only lasted for a day, my disappointment. I shared with my wife, and she says, okay, what can you do? Go back and do it again. But I must tell you, in hindsight, that was the best thing I ever did. Because Pentium was the first processor which was named as Pentium, because Intel had by then discovered they don't even want anyone to copy. They wanted to copyright the name, so nobody can copy even the name of the chip that they had. And we went on to really succeed against all odds. And by the way, they were huge odds when I was doing Pentium. The huge odds were, look at this, IBM, our biggest customer, started building chips like Pentium, okay? Apple joined hands with them to build chips for Apple computers at that time. There was a company named Sun Microsystems. They used to build workstations. They said, forget workstation, because workstation is a thing that very few engineers, highly skilled people use for designing chips. They said, oh, this is 1,000 million times bigger market called personal computer. Let's go into that. So I was getting attacked from all sides. And then our very dear friends at Microsoft, Bill Gates, whom I've met many times, of course he is smart, but he's more cunning than smart. And that never comes out in the press. He's a very shrewd businessman. He actually even started untying the bed he had made with Intel. Remember, his operating system was designed only to work on Intel chips. And he started looking at alternative ways to have chips be built so his operating system would go. That would have been a death knell for Intel. If he had gone out and started occupying other chips, we were not going to be able to compete what was going. So these are against these odds that you have to rise to the occasion. I literally remember setting up what we call outside a war room. And in the war room, on all walls, for every possible conceivable piece of G2 information about what competition is doing, where we are, what all do we need. And by the way, it wasn't just building Pentium processor, which is what people think was a great thing. The whole platform had to be built. Even all the IOs and the circuits that work on it, because we were going to a 5-volt circuitry from 12 and from 5 to 3.3. So I had to really literally work with the industry to create rest of the components that will work with Pentium for Pentium to take off. So these are the kind of stories I want to share just to let you know, behind all this wonderful glory and success lies a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. There are a lot of days of sleepless nights. There's a lot of doubts, questions, setbacks, every step. But just believe in yourself. If you believe in yourself, you will go forward. Of course, it's not just believing in yourself. You have to work very, very hard. That is taken for granted. That's a prerequisite. Working hard is a prerequisite. Then you have to work very smart, because you have 22 balls in the air at the same time. How are you going to make sure you keep on catching them and not let any one of them fall? So you have to be very smart about it. You have to have very high level of honesty and integrity. At every step of my way, one of the reasons that I got the chance to go do what I did, I was fully transparent in all the bad things and all the good things that happened to under my watch. I never tried to hide anything. I was the first one to go tell them, look, this is a big mess, and it's going to cost us a huge amount of capital. And I think it was highly respected and really appreciated, because the sooner a company can find out what's wrong, the sooner they can go fix it. If you keep it all secret and don't share, then the company really sets back by many, many more months and years. So these are little lessons that I want to share with you from my life that actually helped me to be who I am. Now, you can't be in Silicon Valley and not be infected by this bug called startup. Because all around you, everybody's starting a company. And here I am in Intel, already 45-year-old, way beyond the age of 30-something that they believe is the optimal to start a company. And I'm really sitting down and saying, if I stay with Intel, I'll just become senior vice president, executive vice president, president, God knows what all. You're basically an organization man. You do whatever your bosses tell you do. You go to Singapore, go do this. You catch a flight, go to Singapore. That was totally unacceptable, boring, and something I would not have liked. On the other hand, I did not know how to start a work, how to join a startup, what is a startup, and what if I go there and it completely fails? You know, we as Indians are very conservative people. We don't take risk. Even I didn't take risk. Two things I did. First, I made sure there was enough ample money from my Intel financial success to make sure my wife was comfortable for me to step out into a role that may risk any future monies that I may be making. And secondly, I did not go to a real startup in the sense I did not innovate, create something totally from scratch. I joined a 9-year-old startup that was trying to make a Pentium killer called NextGen. So how safe can you get? This is how safe I got. I got there, I liked the elegant design they were doing, but I quickly realized that company had no future against Intel unless they had an underlying technology that was as advanced as Intel. And in search of finding that underlying technology, NextGen ended up getting bought by AMD. And so that's its history. AMD today exists, by the way, only because they made that one move. And today, by the way, they are more advanced than Intel in some of the chips that they are going after. You know, their stock was $2 3 years ago, and it's $40 right now. And it will probably be $160 according to some people. That's only because the company came from death and began to rise again, thanks to their team and thanks to people. So these are some of the things that I wanted to share with you. The last thing I want to share with you is I've been in Silicon Valley for 40 years. And I've really deeply tried to understand, being a very proud Indian and someone who wants to really make a difference to my country, what is it about these people that made them so successful? Because my Pentium team had 165 engineers, about 35 of them were Indian engineers, and they were some of the best engineers, period. And they were competing with Princeton and Yale and Harvard and Stanford and name it. These kids were competing and doing actually exceeding them. I mean, I really had to step away many a time to not promote my own people because there was a doubt whether I was really taking the Indian engineers and pushing them hard. So I let the other people who were their bosses, American bosses, speak to the top management about how did they rank our people with the people from there. And our people were always ranked very high. So I must tell you that you are the best there are, period. There's no question. I have seen it firsthand, intimately. The question is, how do you have the success like I had? My success came because I was in a system that leveraged me to create this amplification. We, unfortunately, don't have that same amplification of system here. But that doesn't mean that you need to be discouraged by that. You need to continue to work towards making that happen. But you need to believe in yourself and make sure that you don't give up. So what did my study in Silicon Valley taught me about then? Why are these people even more advanced than we are, despite the fact that our engineers are better than their engineers? So that study led me to all the way back to the history of America, when the Republic was formed, how they came up with the patent laws, because patent laws are very important. See, people create invention, sometime like Alexander Graham Bell, he created the phone. For the rest of his life, he just basically lived off of the royalty and fees that you get from that invention. So there were very tight laws to enable people who come up with invention to be rewarded for the rest of life doing that. So these are some of the things that US did. The other thing US did was the government, in 1957, Russia and America had what they call a Cold War, and they were afraid of each other. And Russia took a lead and sent a rocket, Sputnik, to the moon. And that really was an awakening thing for Americans to say, oh my God, what happened here? These people are competing and going ahead of us. They created an agency called DARPA, which is a defense agency. And this agency's whole charter was to take very high-risk inventions. And by the way, high-risk inventions means many of them will fail. But they were willing to do that because they knew in high-risk inventions is where the high returns come. So government played a very important role in encouraging inventions to take place. By the way, GPS and internet are both inventions from DARPA. Many people use it every day. I don't think anybody really cared to find out, where did this internet come from? Who invented it? Why did they invent it? What was the whole procedure? And if you go back, it's a very interesting history. Again, military-led, defense-led, government-led procurement of chips, computers for IBM and all that. These companies in America survive because government supports them. So this is a very important thing I wanted to highlight, that our government should also play a role, and I see some of it being played. I read that IIT Kanpur has a cybersecurity section in alliance with the Government of India's National Security Group. I think that's very heartening to me. I think there's areas like machine learning, artificial intelligence, 5G, drone technology, which we need in this country. I would like DTU to take one of these centers of excellence and create it here so we can really drive it forward for our country. That's a very important thing. Minded, the venture capitalists are not very big risk takers at all, even though people think they're risk takers, because they only go for incremental invention. When things are ready to be commercialized is when they enter the picture. The fundamental research is still done, 60% of it's still done in universities by PhD students, the cheap labor, you know. Even in US, we call ourselves cheap labor. I was being paid $325 a month to do research. But look at the impact we make by doing so many of students all over the country for a small amount of money are doing thousands of different experiments. Out of thousands, even if 2 experiments come out right, that takes the country forward. So just remember, it's worth taking the risk in doing research. Last thing I would like to share with you is, you have no idea how lucky you guys are, the graduating class here. I shared with you a little bit about my 1971 batch, where we had, forget about placements on campus, and forget about getting 1 crore salaries. I mean, even for 500 rupees, we could not have somebody come on campus. Somebody just reminded me the other day, corrected me. Yes, one company did come on in 1971, and I didn't even know about it, Srimber J. And I said, how come I didn't even know about it? He said, because you had to have a car and know how to drive a car to be able to appear for the interview, believe it or not. And of course, we have no car. We didn't even have a scooter at that time. You guys are amazingly lucky to step out of here. Not with so many Indian companies. I was in Bangalore, 3 days I was driving around. I was astonished by who's who of the entire world is present there on those streets, crowded streets in Bangalore. So you have job offers from them, you can get jobs with Indian companies, you can go out and get a venture capital from venture capitalists. You are truly a very lucky generation today to be coming out. Now what are you going to do about it? You have a tremendous responsibility to do something about it. For your country, you have to be the steward of this nation. You have to really go out and solve the problems this country has. Whether it's environmental issues, I saw some PhDs in environment, and Lieutenant Governor and I were joking that we need that here in Delhi with all the pollution that's going on. But reality is, we have so many things we can do in biotechnology, in medicine, in genome research, and in engineering. But you have the responsibilities on your shoulder to make that happen. Now, I know you can make an impact in whatever you choose to do and have the potential to be whosoever you want to be. Go change the world. Jai Hind.